Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar, and once again, this is my opinion. As you could tell from the title, it's another episode of First Impressions, the video series where I give my initial thoughts on a variety of topics, from films to books, etc. Today, we're going back to the past to review a film from 1954, one that I've been meaning to watch for years, which those of you who know that I am a fan of classic horror probably are scratching your head and going, "What? You never saw this film before?" But yep, it's true. It is the Jack Arnold directed Creature from the Black Lagoon. Might have been the era of sci-fi, aliens, and giant monster films, but Universal dug down deep into the well and gave us one last horror film in the classic vein of Lugosi, Karloff, and both Junior and Senior. Chaney, that is. Lon Chaney. I'll say I really enjoy this film, and it might be a little early, but I would honestly say I also love it, and I'm kicking myself for not watching it sooner, which is kind of a shame considering that growing up I loved the Monster Squad, which has the Gillman in it and is the closest we ever have gotten to having a 80s Creature from the Black Lagoon remake. That would have been interesting to see. But the film really does hold up, and I can definitely say that I will watch this film repeatedly over and over again. Maybe not right now, but one of these days. And I do look forward to watching the sequels, even though from what I've read they don't have the same polish that this one does in certain regards, due to the studios not wanting to put in much time and effort in certain effects, which I think that's probably going to be a bit distracting for the underwater scenes once I get to it, but that's the next film. From a directing standpoint, Jack Arnold does an excellent job. The type of performances out of the actors you would expect from a film like this, works the camera well. And of course, this is not his first forte into this genre, or science fiction in general. He did It Came From Outer Space, Tarantula, and The Incredible Shrinking Man. And he also directed the first of the sequels, Revenge of the Creature. His cinematographer, William Snyder, they were a great team. And you can also tell the second unit also did an excellent job, because they did a lot of the underwater stuff. Because one thing I did not know, but I was wondering about as I was watching this film, is like, was all this filmed on the backlot, or was there any on location? According to the documentary on the DVD, Back to the Black Lagoon, which, if you can find it, I highly recommend watching that documentary, along with all the documentaries on all these Universal Classics DVDs. There's a lot of interesting material in there. Apparently, all the above water stuff was filmed out here in California, while all the underwater stuff was filmed out in Florida, which is like, that explains it. That's why it gives it a authentic underwater swampy vibe, because they're in an undeveloped part of Florida. I don't know if it's been developed since then, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was partially. But they mesh well together, even though they're using a double for the water stuff. That it looks wonderful. It's one of those things that you notice. I noticed a little bit after the fact, but it's like it meshes so well together you wouldn't notice unless you look very carefully. Now, the plot of the film is that we have a geological expedition in the Amazon, where one of them uncovers fossilized evidence, which is a skeletal hand from the Devonian period. It's only the hand, and they cannot identify it, so they go down there with another expedition, and they go further downriver to a place called the Black Lagoon, as Captain Lucas calls it, and it's there that they come across the creature. Now, when they first see the Gillman, they're like, "Ooh, this guy, this is interesting. Let's study this guy." But the Gillman has human-esque intelligence, and when he sees the heroine of our film, Kay, played by Julie Adams, who was interviewed for the DVD, so it's nice to see her thoughts on the film and the Gillman and all that. He is infatuated, and the rest of the film, he's trying to get her. So from a thematic point of view, it's sort of like a remake of King Kong. You know, they go into, you got a group of adventurers on a boat going into quote-unquote uncharted territory where only the natives have gone. They come across a creature that becomes infatuated with the lead female, tries to get it, and in the end, 'twas beauty that killed the beast. Now, unlike Kong, the creature isn't brought back to civilization, at least in this film, but all the vibes are there. And I was even noting that as I was watching the film. It's like, it's cool. It's like, that's how you do a similar story, but without the same plot. The actors do a good job. I mean, Richard Carlson is Dr. David Reed. He is excellent. He is the lead male of the story, and our hero. His final little tete-a-tete with the creature really leads to a good climax. And his character is a personification of one of the themes that is more a retroactive one that, at least based on how they do it in the documentary, wasn't fully intended, and that is environmentalism. And I guess you could also say some conservationism. That part was a little bit more obvious, but it's not too on the nose, and that is his character for most of the film wants them to keep the creature intact, catch it alive if they can, if not studying it in its natural habitat. Of course, by the end he changes his mind a little bit, but at that point it's either this creature or us. And it's also sold home, that theme, with one shot that I noticed, but I didn't know if that's what they were intending, and that is a cigarette thrown into the lagoon, pans down to see the creature, he's looking up. He's obviously looking at the female, but that little denote thing is there. Then we got Richard Denning as Dr. Mark Williams, who is Carlson's foil, and the fact that he wants to catch the creature by killing it. So he's essentially the big white game hunter character of the film, even though he doesn't click all the boxes. He does fit a little bit into that mold where it's like, oh, we got this creature. Now we want to show it and make a lot of money and prove it exists. I'll get my gun and we'll stuff it. And he's not really villainous, it's just that he's very obsessed with killing the creature, and a couple times he makes some mistakes, and without giving spoilers, it is his undoing. You can kind of guess, based on how these movies go, what that means, but I'm not saying anything. Julie Adams, she does a great job as Kay. The swim scene, even though she only did the above water stuff, she looks excellent in that swimsuit. She has some rapport with a lot of her actors, more so with Carlson. They're supposed to be the romantic leads, but it's very subtle, but enough is there for us to know, and there's even a kiss near the end. The famous swim scene, I just love that scene, and even though Kay did not do a lot of the swimming below water for that, according to the documentary, the way that scene is done from a character standpoint, it is really great. And it's almost like a dance, as she put it. It is essentially a love scene without being a love scene, where we see her swimming, the creature slowly coming up, looking at her, and the point where he just tentatively touches her foot, but then quickly withdraws his hand. It's a longing, and they really sell it well, and it adds some sympathy to the Gilman, which is intentional, and she even notes that. And I forget exactly how she worded it, but it made me think of how Ishiro Honda talked about monsters and how they're tragic beings. And you can apply that to Gilman, especially over the course of all three films, because it's very hinted that all three films it's the same Gilman. Antonio Moreno as Carl. He does a decent job for what he's there. He's the first character we see in the film. And Nestor Pavia as Lucas. He does a good job. The rest of the cast also do a good job for what they have to do. Which, of course, leads to the last two I got to mention, the Gilman suit actors. We had Ben Chapman on land, Enrico Browning underwater. Now, I think it's a good idea that they decided to do this, because trying to get someone who could do the cumbersome Gilman above water and then the swimming one underwater, they could have done it, but it's a little easier just to do it this way. Now, if you look carefully at the suits, you'll notice that there are subtle differences between them. And I even noticed that the first time we saw the underwater one in all its glory. At first, I'm like, is that because it's lit differently? I'm like, oh, it's because it's a different suit. But it's subtly. It's like the head shape is a little different. The chest is slightly different. And also, it seems Chapman was a bit bulkier. And Browning, being a swimmer, was a little bit more streamlined, which fits the fact that his character is supposed to be aquatic. But this little back and forth works because on land, we see that the Gilman, even though he is bipedal and can go on land, he's more cumbersome above water. Whereas in the water, he's graceful, fast. You really see he's a creature of the deep. And that little back and forth worked. Browning would reprise the role in the sequel. Apparently, he actually wanted to be credited. Universal said no, but they did give him a cameo out of costume in one scene. So it's a nice little consolation prize there. The musical score is pretty good, and it was done by three people: Henry Mancini, Hans Salter, and Herman Stein. I don't know which pronunciation it goes with. Now, if you know their works, you can kind of tell which parts of the film they did. But the one interesting thing to mention about this is the creature's main theme. as I was watching, I'm like, they're really putting this theme a lot of in the movie. Now, I knew the theme before because if you know your film history, especially when it comes to foreign film dubbing, you'll know that when Universal localized King Kong vs. Godzilla, they took out the original score and replaced it with stock music, including music from Creature from the Black Lagoon, which that was the main one they used. And I'll say it does kind of fit the parts in that film it uses, but let's just say that it's used a lot more in this film than it is in that one. It's more intrusive at points, like we just see the hand come out and it's like dun 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 dun. Later on, when the creature's actually combating him, it fits a little bit more, but just doing it for a hand, it's like, that's a little intrusive. All because the Universal executives told them, we want that theme whenever the creature's shown, and you're gonna do it! Alright, guys. It's one of those things, some scenes it works, some scenes it doesn't, but it's gonna be up to personal preference, I guess. But I do agree with the documentary, at times it feels intrusive. All in all, Creature from the Black Lagoon is a 50s classic. Last of the classic Universal monster movies, in my opinion, and it's an opinion I seem to share with other people. At 79 minutes, not too long, so pretty good watch. The actors do a great job. Arnold did a great directing job. The film still looks excellent even today. Those creature effects still look good. Not really too many other special effects. At times you can kind of tell they're on a set, mainly because of the backdrop, but it's not too distracting and adds a little bit of a old school charm to the film. If you haven't seen this film and you're a fan of the other Universal monster movies, I'd say give it a watch. If you're not a fan of them yet and you're curious, I'd say this is one to watch, maybe not first, but close to first.